Jeff Paterson. Jeff, did you catch any playoff hockey last night?
I did. Actually, I watched a fair bit of both games. Certainly was locked in on the Oilers and the Golden Knights, but watched the overtime. It didn't last long before Carolina won. And as Harm said, I mean, I can't remember what the final numbers were, but the shot attempts were like 105 to 30 or something for the Carolina. Like the discrepancy was insane. And I mean, Washington finished with 14 shots on goal. And for the longest time, it looked like Vegas might not eclipse 14 shots on goal. So the home teams, teams that had higher expectations, not exactly charging out of the gate in round two. And I think for me, the scary part with the Oilers here, guys, is like Corey Perry is not just window dressing on that top line, but this guy has found his finishing again at the playoff level. He's played 222 career Stanley Cup playoff games. And so if you got Corey Perry on your top line, obviously he's going to benefit from playing with McDavid and Draisaitl at times, but it allows them then to move Zach Hyman around. And I think you saw last night that the depth of the Edmonton Oilers, I think at times we've all wondered, like, is it just a two-man team? They're doing this without Matthias Ekholm. They're doing it with Calvin Pickard in goal. But, Connor Brown scores the goal to seal the deal there last night. And yes, Vegas was without Pietrangelo and without Dorofeyev. They need those guys back because I kind of thought Vegas looked a little slow last night. Tanner Pearson was playing on their top line at times, which is great for Tanner Pearson. But, I don't know if Tanner Pearson on the top line at this stage of his career is the blueprint for a team that has designs on going really deep in the playoffs. So it's one game. That's all it is. But good on the Oilers, good on the Carolina Hurricanes. They get the jump. They had to win one in the visiting rink because the lower seed. And so they've accomplished that. And let's see where things go from here.
J-Pat, just watching the playoffs to this point, are there any lessons or takeaways that have stood out to you from the Canucks perspective or just overall team building philosophy?
Yeah, I think we do this every year where we try to take some lessons of the teams that are still playing and apply them to the teams that aren't. And for the Vancouver Canucks, they just need a whole lot more. We know that, right? Offensively, they need a whole lot more. And the physicality of that first round, I kind of would try to, in my mind, insert the Canucks into some of those series and basically ask myself, like, would they survive? Like, physically, would they survive? And there were a couple of series there where I'm not so sure. This is not a big team up front. Most of their size is on the back end, the way that Rick Tocchet had wanted his defense core built. But up front, they're not an abrasive group. They're not a group that is terribly proactive as opposed to being one that has to react. And then in saying that, I mean, some of the component parts got to round two, game 7 last year against Edmonton. So, they had a little bit of success, a taste of it at the very least. But no, I mean, the more that I look is just, who's going to initiate outside of Kiefer Sherwood? Like, who are the wrecking balls? Because we see that guys that are skill players, finesse players in the regular season, but they sort of change their stripes come playoff time. I'm not sure that the Canucks have a lot of those guys, and I don't know if you saw it yesterday, but I tweeted out 4 forward lines based on players that are under contract for the Vancouver Canucks, and it's going to change. Like, there are guys that are their own RFAs. There are guys that are pending UFAs that could be back. There's trades, obviously, that's coming. But of the 12 forwards that I put line combinations together for that are under contract for next year, like, it is so thin in such a hurry. And it just underscores how much work there is left to be done for this team, not just to make the playoffs, but ultimately to be a team that then can win a couple of rounds, consider itself a contender. And so that's the challenge. We know Jim Rutherford has vocalized it. He realizes that it's quite a challenge as well. But in terms of lessons, to me, it's just the forward group and how far away the Vancouver Canucks are right now.
Jeff, something else you tweeted out today that I found really interesting was when it comes to the Canucks coaching search, talking about can they find a coach that isn't going to ride Demko into the ground? Obviously, you pointed out Bruce Boudreau in the tweet. You also obviously mentioned Tocchet as well. That's a really interesting thing to kind of ponder here because, I mean, if I was the coach and I was coming into my first year, I'd probably do the same.
Exactly. And I assume that in today's coaching search that these candidates do their homework, they go over the roster, they recognize, but if you're getting this Canucks job, like, what is your path to immediate success? It's Elias Pettersson having a bounce back. it's Quinn Hughes somehow leveling up yet again, and yet I think we all think that he probably will do that. But the next one on that chart would be Thatcher Demko playing like Thatcher Demko, being the elite goaltender, the Vezina finalist, and a new coach comes in, he wants wins right out of the gate. It wouldn't shock me at all if he turned to Thatcher Demko, who gets this whole offseason to rest up, to recover, to train, to be ready to go. And the hope obviously is that he's completely healthy when the season rolls around. And so, the last two guys have driven Demko into the ground essentially. So what have we learned here? And is there an organizational edict that says to whoever is given the keys to this job that, look, you can't. You've got Lankinen here now. You've got two guys that you have to believe in. And it's not about having this success right out of the gate in October. It's about having a guy that can be there for you when the chips are down the stretch, and ultimately into the playoffs if the team makes it. But no, I think I can see that scenario playing out, but I do hope that sort of, not that you're going to get it in writing from the new coach, but that there is just this understanding that Thatcher Demko at this stage of his career and with the injuries that he's dealt with, less is probably more in the big picture here. But I won't be shocked if Thatcher Demko is the starting goaltender on opening night, and if all of a sudden they fall into this pattern of trying to get on a run on the back of their guy.
Since Rick Tocchet left, it really feels like, to me anyway, that there's been a lot of heat from the fan base directed at the organization, at management, and at ownership. And I don't think it's so much about Rick Tocchet specifically as much as it is the organization just continues to rack up a lot of L's, quite frankly, over the last few months. And it just sort of feels like that was maybe the straw that broke the camel's back in a sense. First of all, have you sensed that just large shift over the last few weeks where it really feels like there's a lot of pessimism among the fan base? And secondly, when it does come to that conversation of how dysfunctional this franchise has been lately, how much of that responsibility do you think management bears, and how much of it do you think ownership bears?
Without a doubt, I sense it the same way that you do. And I think Rick Tocchet stepping away when the reported offer of 5x5 was on the table and that wasn't enough, I think people recognize then, man, there are some really deep-seated issues here that a guy would turn his back on the chance to continue coaching Quinn Hughes and other component parts and live in a great city. But money doesn't solve everything, and money can't ultimately get guys to stay. And so, I think that was just sort of the topper that even the coach wants out here what is going on. So who bears responsibility? It's funny because I've had this conversation with people in the organization, and I want to make it abundantly clear. What happened before Jim Rutherford and Patrick Elvine and ultimately Rick Tocchet arrived here, they're not responsible for. But I don't know that they fully grasp that they've inherited a fan base that has dealt with 55 years of losing. I think in their mind, Canuck history starts when they took over the job, but that's just not the way it works. And so every year that goes by, the Canucks flame out and don't make the playoffs and ultimately don't win the Stanley Cup, the angst in this market grows. And I think they have to be willing to accept that at the very least. Like when Jim Rutherford said, yeah, it's not great, fourth coach in 4 years, but I want to make it clear I've only hired one. Well, he's going to hire the second one here. It felt like he was trying to dodge a little bit of Canuck history in saying that. And your constituents, the people that buck up repeatedly and the ones that the renewal rate's at 90+%, these people have dealt with a lot of crap over a lot of years, and they want to win, and they want to be entertained, and they want to feel like they're getting value for their money. So I think it's important that management recognizes that. Ownership would have a better feel for that. I think ownership also senses the fair bit of heat directed at it. And look, there have been a lot of missteps from the ownership side of things. Obviously more family drama here in the last week or so, but I do think that this ownership group has written the checks to allow management to spend to the cap, and it sounds like they're going to continue to do that. And just from a working framework, then, I put it more at the feet of management, quite frankly. I get the people that have it out for ownership, but you don't get a say in this. As much as you want to scream on social media, you can't tell the Aquilinis to sell the team. Like, it just doesn't work that way. It's not a democracy. It's a business. And if they choose to sell, that's going to be their decision ultimately. And that's not to say that people can't put heat on ownership, but you can't force them to sell. That's sort of the point that I'm making here. So it comes back to who's running this thing. And it sounds like management has been given the resources to get the job done. And unfortunately, it looked like they were trending in the right direction a year ago. And 12 months later, here we sit as they sort of are spinning their wheels and have a massive summer out in front of them.
Jeff, Canucks have the 15th overall pick. Feels like a foregone conclusion that they're going to flip that pick for a center. But quickly, I'll ask you, are you team trade the pick? Are you team draft a player with it? Where are you there?
Well, I laughed, and this doesn't apply to Canucks Army because we always get it right with the headlines there. But I saw a lot of headlines yesterday, like Canucks will pick 15th. And I was like, no, they hold the 15th selection in the draft, but let's not for a second think that you can say on the record that the Canucks are going to pick 15th. I anticipate that it's very much in play. The question is, what is its value in a draft that sounds like it gets pretty thin after about 5 or 6 picks? And so the 15th overall pick, I mean, at least now it's a fixed asset, right? Like, they know what they're working with, but it's probably going to take 15 plus. And so what is the plus, and how deep do you go there? And a lot of people are sensing that, hey, if there's truly sticking points with Willander, is that 15 and Willander? I just fear, I guess I fear, and maybe this is the pessimist in me speaking here, that if Quinn elects to walk in a couple of years, or they get to the point that they have to trade Quinn, there really isn't much in the system, guys. I'm watching Abbotsford closely these days. We're doing rink-wide after each and every one. We'll be at it again tonight. And, Jonathan Lecker-Mackey is supposed to get back in the lineup tonight, but he's been out for a while, but hasn't played particularly well and hasn't produced down there. There's still questions about what is he, how quickly is he going to arrive at the National Hockey League level? And he is their prize prospect. Willander's not even in the fold. And yeah, DPD has come a long way. It would be so much better if this Abbotsford playoff run right now was on the backs of those young guys and, they were doing it every night, but it's not. It's on a bunch of AHL veterans like Sammy Blais and Phil DiGiuseppe and Jujar Khaira the other night. And that's great for Abbotsford. You need those kinds of guys. But in terms of the, so if getting back to your question about trading the first rounder, I mean, we've seen them do that so often here of late. This isn't a team that has a stockpile of prospects just waiting. They've got guys. We saw them roll 16 different players through Vancouver that played in Abbotsford this year, but they're not all going to be full-time NHLers. They're all certainly not going to be difference makers at the NHL level. And then it puts so much pressure to develop the next DPD from a third-round pick or Kirill Kudratsev from the 7th round. That doesn't happen very often in the National Hockey League. Sure, some of those guys make it, but if you're trading away your first and second round picks, it's going to catch up to you at some point. And the question is, when does that bill come due? And so, as much as I don't like the idea of trading the first round pick again, I also understand that you got to give to get. And I do expect that 15th will be in the hands of somebody else come draft day. And then I guess it's just a question of, ultimately what can they get in return to try to build up that forward group.
Speaking of Abbotsford, tied in the series right now in round 2 against Coachella Valley. What have you seen from Abbotsford so far, and how do you like their chances of potentially moving on?
Well, I like their chances. They've boiled this thing down to a best of 3 now with all the games in Abbotsford. So they did what they had to do to get the split down in Palm Springs. So now it's almost like the first round against Tucson, where all the games were played out in the Fraser Valley. Their performance has been spotty through the first 5 games. Sammy Blais has been good and productive, leads the Canucks with 6 points. But all of his goals have come on the power play. There have been some others. We talked about, Jujar Khaira had a big night the other night. That's great for him. But a player like Arshdeep Bains, who led Abbotsford in regular season scoring and did it while spending chunks of time in the National Hockey League as well, he's been remarkably quiet so far. And I have to think the longer they play here in the playoffs, the better the chance that he'll have a night where you think, all right, like that's the guy that they need more often. But he's got 4 points in 5 games, but 2 of them are primary assists and 2 are secondary assists, and really hasn't been a dominant force. Max Sasson has had some moments, but 3 points in 5 games. You'd like to see more there. And now I'm a little worried about some injuries. Jet Wu got knocked out of the game 3 minutes in the other night. They were down to 5 defensemen. I know he was skating yesterday, but I don't expect that he's going to play. And Ratu left the game the other night after 2 periods, and it's tough to get injury updates at playoff time in any level, but particularly out of the American Hockey League. I don't expect that Ratu's going to play tonight. And Harman, he's been really quiet for a guy that finished the season so strong in the National Hockey League. And if he's not producing, then you got to do other things, win faceoffs and kill penalties. He got beaten cleanly, like had his clock cleaned on a faceoff that led to the opening goal in Palm Springs the other night. And so just expecting more based on his resume and his experience in the pro game. I'm expecting more there. So curious to see. I'm curious to see what Manny Malhotra does in goal tonight, because Artur Silovs got the hook the other night. Tolopilo came in, played well, and then got caught out of the net, turned the puck over on the winner. And so my hunch is that Tolopilo will get the net tonight. Hasn't played a home game yet in these playoffs. And Artur Silovs has had his moments, but he gave up 3 on 8 shots, and they were behind the 8 ball 3-0 before mounting a stirring comeback the other night. So I guess the best way to put it is it's been spotty in terms of individual efforts. They've given up an early goal in each of the first 2 games against Coachella Valley. That's a difficult way to play and have success, unless you're the Edmonton Oilers, apparently. But again, they're in good shape in a 1-1 tie with these 3 games, if necessary, here at home. And I just hope that they're healthy enough and don't sustain any more injuries, because attrition obviously can play a factor in any sort of plans on a long playoff run. So big one tonight. If they can get the win tonight, then they get 2 cracks at eliminating Coachella Valley. But the flip side there is if they fall, then it's back-to-back losses, and now their backs are against the wall. So let's see what happens. I still like their chances to prevail in this series.
All right. Well, you'll get to see how it goes tonight, and you'll be covering it on Rinkwide. Are we calling it Rinkwide Abbotsford? What's the policy here, Jeff? What are you saying?
Yeah, we're calling it Rinkwide, and I fight to not call it Rinkwide Vancouver, but old habits die hard. But sure, we can call it Rinkwide Abbotsford Playoff Edition. Dave, we can call it whatever you'd like. As long as people are watching, the name doesn't really matter to me, but it does fall under the Rinkwide banner, and we're hoping that we get a whole bunch more Abbey playoff games to work.
And there's going to be one tonight, and Jeff, you can watch Jeff on Rinkwide. We'll call it Rinkwide. We'll just call it Rinkwide.
And Dave Hall, who was
Dave
with
Hall.
you guys yesterday. Yes, so Dave's
exactly.
been doing a terrific job joining me, and he's going to be on with me again tonight. So I always look forward to his thoughts and takes and analysis after these Abbotsford playoff games.
Jeff, thanks for doing this. We'll see you later.
All right, sounds good, guys. Thanks.
There he is, Jeff Paterson, the host of Rinkwide Vancouver, Rinkwide Abbotsford, Rinkwide, host of Rinkwide, Jeff Paterson.